welcome to the Empowering Women podcast. It is so hard for me to believe, but it is the last episode of 2023. And it's also hard for me to believe that it is my third season with a podcast. The good or maybe bad news is I will be back for season 4, so you're not getting rid of me quite yet. And I hope that you're enjoying the holiday season with all the hope and fun and especially sparkle that goes with this season. I typically in my December episode bring you really close in my inner circle, and today I have done just that. I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to someone who's played a significant role in my journey. Dina Boggess is a procurement and integrated supply chain leader, but for me personally, she's been my leader twice. She asked for it twice. She's a glutton for punishment. And she's a member of my personal board of directors. It is an absolute true gift to share her wonderful positivity with all of you today. Welcome, Dina, to the podcast.
Gina, thank you so much for having me on the Empowering Women podcast. I'm delighted to be here, delighted to get to speak to you and share a little part of this journey with you.
Yeah, and we're going to have some good girl time today. I'll probably forget that we're recording, which could be dangerous, but hopefully not too dangerous. As I mentioned on the outset, you've been an important person on my personal and my professional journey. I know that you're a longtime listener to the podcast because I'll get texts sometimes that say, I love that story, but I want you to share your story today. So tell our listeners a little bit more about your journey and what's brought you to where you are today.
Absolutely. Shannon, thanks for the opportunity. I think for me, Shannon, my journey through life has really been rooted in 2 core aspects of who I am. The first, as you know, is my love of storytelling and communication. It goes through every ounce of my being. And the second is I'm a very driven person and I love to learn. So I'm always looking at what's that next experience. So for me, those 2 things go together, again, through everything I've done. And I started my journey quite by accident in integrated supply chain. And it was fascinating to me. I loved figuring out everything that goes into having a good available at the right time, at the right location. And so for me, I embarked on that journey and focusing on those learnings. It's been an incredible journey. Lots of different roles, different locations, different business units, different companies, different industries. But through all of it, one, I learned. And so that really fulfilled a core of who I am. And then 2, I always thought about value. So what's the value I was bringing, whoever my customer was, my team, the company. It's been an incredible journey so far. And I'm really excited at the journey that's yet to come. So that's my story. That's where I am.
One of my favorite stories about Dina's journey is where one of the places where she worked early in her career. So I met Dina more in an industrial space, but she started her career actually in retail. So at one point, I believe, Dina, you worked for the Limited. And when I was growing up, I'm going to tell my age here, but when I was growing up, the Limited was it. That's where you wanted your clothes from. And I believe, Dina, you actually started your career helping them set up stores and like the common setup for stores. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I started my my career, Shannon, as you said, with company Tween Brands, and Limited 2 was one of their brands. But it was fascinating. And again, I think understanding the magic that it takes to have supplies for 1,000 stores, the magic that happens at that point for those little girls when they walked in the store. It was such a cool experience. And I loved your reaction when I initially told you that of, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, you work for the Limited. She's probably like, has this girl lost it?
But again, I think it goes back to that communication and storytelling. In that case, yes, the company is selling apparel, but really what they're selling is that story, the magical feeling that goes with it.
Yeah, they're selling the experience. And Dina knows this. She's watched me do a couple of career pivots. I've learned a lot about experience in this role, that it's not always about the technical aspects. Those are important, but it's often about the full experience. And I think we'll get into some of that today, not on the customer side, but more on the employee experience side.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Dina, you were kind enough to agree to be here. And one of the things I thought about was, where do I want to tackle this? Because one of the things that Dina's incredible at is leading people and connecting with people. And so I always like to do a little something different in December, and something special that means a lot to me. And what hit my heart pretty quickly was a discussion of courage. And I recently did a talk at a conference in October about courage. And I wanted to discuss some of those elements of courage because I've seen Dina have that so many times in her career. So one of my favorite quotes, and you guys know I'm going here with Brene Brown, she says, courage is a heart word. The root of the word courage, pardon me, is core, the Latin word for heart. So I'm curious what words you would associate with courage and what do they mean to you?
Yeah, Shannon, for me, it's a multitude of words, and it's really a stance. So when I think about courage, it's really stepping into that unknown purposefully, with your head held high, and just tackling that challenge head on. As you know, I'm such a huge fan of being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And I think that when you put yourself in situations like that, it means you're growing. And again, that could be growth technically, that could be growth from a leadership standpoint, could be growth personally. But I think about it from that standpoint of that drive to say, this is a little uncomfortable, and I'm going to purposely step into that.
Yeah, and she's watched me do this so many times. I'm going to tell you guys a secret. When I got this email to be on the podcast from Charlie, Dina's one of the first people that I told, and she's like, "Oh, that's amazing." And I'm like, "Is it really?" Because I'm not really sure to do with this whole podcast thing. And she was one of the people that said, "Oh no, you know about this, right? You can do this. Just take one baby step at a time." And I love what you say about courage is just holding your head up and doing it anyway.
Absolutely. Shannon, is there any strong words that come forward for you that are linked to courage?
I think heart is one. Another one that we won't talk as much about today for me is being empathetic. And I know maybe that doesn't sound, but I think that to be courageous with people, you really have to understand their story, to your point on the outset about storytelling. And so really being empathetic and like saying, really getting in with them, getting in with the muck sometimes, and understanding that story, that's courageous, both for the person sharing their story and then to sit in that with them, I think is very courageous.
Absolutely. I think it goes to the core of, again, opening yourself up to that experience, and that means showing up for that other person or persons as well.
So there's another one, showing up.
Hmm.
I think showing up is courageous because sometimes we overthink. Start
Absolutely.
thinking about, and I think I'm gonna pick on women here. I think we're notorious for overthinking. And I'm raising my hand. If you're watching the video, you can see it. I'm a great overthinker. But sometimes it's just showing up and letting what will be what will be. And that's not
Absolutely.
easy to do.
Yeah, and Shannon, I'll link that. I know this is one of the things you and I both really lean into, which is rather than fake it till you make it, fake it till you become it. And
Become it.
again,
Yep.
absolutely step into it. And as you said, you may have those doubts, you may have that uncomfortableness, but be brave and have courage.
Yeah. And with that word, it has a lot of visceral response for me. But I think that become it is so important in that statement. And I also
Absolutely.
think one of the foundational elements is connection.
Hmm.
And to be
Yes.
honest, I don't know about what you've seen, but I feel like this is missing, and especially after COVID, in a lot of our communities and workplaces, and unfortunately, some of our families.
Mm-hmm.
So being on your team, having that blessing twice, and then in what I would think is closer to your inner circle, I just think is an incredible strength for you. I've watched you so many times connect with people. What one or two pieces of advice would you have for listeners about building connection in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Shannon, taking advantage of the employer that you're at, it is a great opportunity to build connections. So I think two pieces of advice to share. The first is use the company initiatives, projects, employee resource groups, volunteering events, even as an example, to create connections and network, and be mindful to not just gravitate towards the people that are naturally in your circle, just maybe based on the role or the business unit that you may have. Be purposeful and find others that you wouldn't normally have in a day-to-day. It's really impactful when you see that broad audience, and you'll be surprised what you have in common, what you enjoy, and how those connections come back into play. So that's the first piece.
That is so true.
Oh, absolutely. Tap into it. I think the second piece, Shannon, and this is something I've really honed probably for me the last 5 to 10 years, is as you continue to grow in your career, as you change jobs, as you change business units, companies, industries, as an example, be really thoughtful on how and what connections you're going to keep. Keeping connections takes time and energy, and you want to be very respectful of your connections and yourself. And so how are you going to do that in an authentic way? It sounds really easy. I found that as time goes on, that's something for me that I'm really mindful about. Any experiences from your side on that, Shannon?
Yeah, two things come to mind. I totally agree with you well, I agree with you on both, but the second one really resonates with me because you and I've stayed, we've gone different ways. Our careers have taken us different ways, and we stayed. I mean, do we talk every week? No, but we've stayed connected.
Yes.
So when I called you for this, it wasn't like I called you out of the clear blue sky and you're like, oh, okay. So I agree with that. I think it also that connection brings me and probably you so much joy. And so I think, especially during the holiday season when things are really stressful, I feel like interjecting these connections, and it could be a coworker, and to your point, it could be somebody that's moved on. It's creating that I just did it this morning. Actually, I put time on somebody's calendar in a week or two to just literally just to catch up, and see how they're doing. And I know they've been experiencing a little bit of a rough time, so just wanting to see how they are. I think that's really important. The last thing that comes up for me, Dina, something you're really good at, so I'm gonna pull this out here. I remember when we worked on the same team, you're really good about birthdays. And so I think one of the things I'm really becoming acutely aware is bringing humanity back to the workplace, is what I call it. And you were always so good at that. Now, I was notorious. I put confetti in people's cubicles when they didn't really want it. That sparkle was there, whether they wanted it or not. But you were so good at, even if it was just a simple birthday card on their desk when they came into work, it made them feel special and connected. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for me, Shannon, it's the little things. It really doesn't have to be these big, grandiose gestures necessarily, but it is that humanity. And I think it's celebrating the wins in an authentic way. And again, those wins are someone's birthday, it's someone's promotion, it's the birth of a child, or a new business venture. And I know for me, at least, I get such joy at being able to be part of celebrating those wins for others. Honestly, sometimes even more than some of my own wins. And again, when you have that connection and it's in an authentic way, it's such a beautiful gift, honestly, for everybody involved.
I'm going to get you to tell a funny story. She's going to know what I'm talking about. You know, the loud, notorious things that our team had that the other team next to us didn't really care for? Tell our audience about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things the team that we were on at the time that we did really focused on just employee engagement, bringing the team together. One, we like to have fun, but two, we loved that we were very focused and we got things done. And so one of the things we did was we launched this cowbell. And so
a real cowbell. It was awesome.
A real cowbell, branded and everything. And we sent them out globally with this really neat message about the fact that as a team, regardless of where we were, and we were spread all across the globe, when we had a win, we were going to celebrate and ring that cowbell really, really loud. And so as Shannon said, we had some teams next to us that
did not appreciate our celebration.
No, and we'd be on meetings and ringing it or whatever the particular initiative was. But it was it's one of one of the great memories I have of that team.
So what I may do for fun, Dina, in the show notes, it won't obviously be the branded version we did. I may find a cowbell and put it in the show notes because it's so fun, and you're gonna get a lot more pleasure out of it than you really understand.
Oh, absolutely. It's you need it personally and professionally.
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
So there you go. There's your fun piece of advice for today. Go get a cowbell. It's going to be it's a stress reliever, and it's really fun to do.
absolutely.
One of the things I think people don't really link with connection is understanding your own sense of purpose. And I think it's hard to connect with others, especially in the workplace, if you don't understand your own sense of purpose. And then it keeps you from building the true trust and rapport that you could do. I'm curious what your leadership purpose is, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, Shannon, I've got sort of I'll call it a two-pronged approach. So the first one is, again, going back to the communication storytelling. I always want to make sure that I'm creating a clear vision. I'm helping others, understand that why. I think when you drive really big and bold goals, people have to understand the why and how they fit into it. So that's core to me, and something that I've always tried to do. And then I think the second piece is I really wanted to utilize my voice, utilize the roles that I've had, the platforms that have been created. One, shine bright, be able to show others that, hey, maybe you could take a non-traditional route or do something you didn't think you could do before. And so be an example, and then also give back. So something for me, it's just a passion. I love coaching. I love being able to mentor and support and help others in their journey, whether it's in my function or not. I think that's a huge piece of it. I've been so blessed with mentors and coaches and sponsors. And so being able to give back is a huge piece of it. And so I would say those are two key tenets, Shannon, that are part of my leadership purpose.
Yeah. And she's probably going to kill me later, but she's a phenomenal coach and mentor. And Dina, I don't know if you're ever going to do this, but if you ever do start, even if it's a side hustle, the coaching, mentoring aspect, I will tell everybody on this phone, I'm going to be your first cheerleader, and you're probably going to get a flood of requests because I'm going to be sending you people left and right. Because it's funny, in my own organization, I hear it all the time, being a co-leader of the Women's Employee Network, of we need more mentoring, we need more coaching. And it's been a theme for the past 6 to 7 years that I've been involved in and around employee resource groups. It comes up all the time, regardless of your dimension of diversity or how you identify.
Absolutely. And I think, Shannon, you and I have both benefited personally, one, from coaching and mentoring. And then two, I think we've had some really incredible opportunities, one of which you led, to be able to give back and to start a movement, as an example. And to me, again, it's something that I'm so passionate about because there's such a bigger need. And again, I think you think about the legacy that you want to leave, or what I want to leave as an example, that's a piece of it. Being able to give back, help those future generations, or all generations. And it's a gift that I think it's something for me I'll continue to lean into.
And I also think it's a gift that keeps on giving, because I think, Dina, when you've given that to somebody, my guess is either maybe not soon after that, but they're going to maybe be a year, it could be 5 years after you had a conversation with them. They may share that gift with somebody else. And it's a gift that really never stops giving.
Absolutely. I think, Shannon, to go back to what I said about be that light, I think it links to that. It takes one person or a handful of people. And as they continue to light and help someone else, kind of open up theirs, it just grows and grows and grows. And it's the most fantastic thing to be a part of.
Yeah. I was just sitting here thinking, I asked you that question. I'm like, how can I answer what my own purpose is? I think mine and yours are very similar. I have sort of a two-pronged.
Yeah.
One is, regardless of the technical acumen in the group that I am part of or are leading, and in this case, it's leading, it's making sure that I get up every day to think about how I can make that place the best place for them to come to work. So how do I bring that humanity into the workplace? And so I'm pushing myself there because sometimes it's hard to slow down. You've
Mhm.
got this big to-do list, and you and I are very good at making to-do list.
Yes,
But
we
you're
are.
like, oh, have I asked that person? Just this morning, I reached out and said, how did your 1-year-old's birthday party go? Right. Those are the
Mhm.
experiences I think that matter. So I think that for me is number one on my purpose. And
Mhm.
two, it is being shone in that light and really focusing on how do I improve gender parity in STEM and what can I do to make a difference there. That's inside of work, but a little bit more of outside of my day job. So there's two
Absolutely.
examples for you, audience. I encourage you to think about that. And if don't get frustrated, if you sit down in one sitting, you're not going to get it. My guess is that Dina's been working on this for a while. I know I have. So don't think you're just going to sit down in an hour and go, got it. It's probably going to take you a little bit.
Yeah, Shannon, the other thing I would add is I know at least for me that purpose it is shifted and changed over time
Good point.
as I've grown. And so I think again, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I don't know that I would have given you, or I know I would not have given you that exact same answer. So just throwing that out, that whatever your answer is, that's the answer for right now. Doesn't mean that's what it has to look like go forward. Could be different, could be the same. But
That's a
that's part
really
of the
good point.
journey.
So checks in the mail, you just led me to the second part of this question is what is the journey that you've taken to get to that purpose? Like, because to your point, if
Mm.
I'd asked you this question 10 years ago, you'd have given me a different answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, Shannon, when I when I self-reflect and I think about my leadership journey, it's all the different experiences. So just as an example, I've led teams where I was the youngest, and there's challenges that comes with that.
Mm.
I've led teams where I was once a peer and now I'm stepping into that leadership role. I've led global teams and I've had to, or not had to, I've had the opportunity to learn about different cultures, communication styles, even as something as silly as how do you schedule meetings when you have many, many time zones
Yeah.
across the
Yeah. You're like,
globe?
well, I can't do it then. I know I have my
Yes.
own meeting calendar. I'm figuring out what time zone it is in the different places. Yep.
Correct. And then I think Shannon, for me, the one of the other pieces is when you're at that point where you're leading leaders of leaders, that's a
Mm.
whole different journey as well. And so if I think about those examples I just gave you, those are all different scenarios, all different aspects of growth, and every team is different. So even if you said you led 2 global teams, everyone is different. And so for me, that's part of my journey is taking those learnings, applying those best practices, and every one of those has shaped who I am today. And I know my future teams will do the exact same thing. So it's an incredible journey, and it's really a gift from that standpoint. But it is a journey, and it's never ending.
Yeah.
How about you, Shannon? What sticks out for you?
Well, I had a funny story that I don't know, Dina, why in the world this popped into my head, but I think it was, you can get me, it was India. I think it was a trip that you had done to India for work. And I
Okay.
remember I was thinking about the cultural piece of what you just said. You have to plant a tree or something similar.
Yes. It was a beautiful gift, I would say, from the site that I was visiting, where we got myself and the leader I was traveling with got to plant a tree that they kept that's still there today. One, we did different fruit trees and things like that, and so the employees on site were able to take home that food. But then two, obviously that tree is there forever and is going to continue to grow. So it was such an amazing opportunity that honestly touched me deeply to know that that legacy will continue to be there.
Yep. I remember the picture. I wasn't there on the trip, but I remember the picture.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's I have it to this day, and it's a beautiful memory.
Yeah, that's fine. To your question, I think it's I've learned this over the last year. So often I get frustrated with myself and saying, well, I wanted to be here or I wanted to better understand my purpose. By
Mhm.
the end of 2023, I'm making that up. But one
Mhm.
of the things I've really learned is you're in the right timing for you.
Yes.
And so I say that as a hope and an inspiration to those listening that if you don't know your purpose or you're not sure, it's okay. You're in the right place for you right now. And that Jennifer Watson, one of my coaches, calls it your divine calling. You're going to get there when it's right for you. It doesn't mean not to keep stretching yourself and thinking and asking the hard questions, but it's sort of a gut check to say, yep, you're figuring it out one piece at a time, and you're on the timeline that you were meant to be on. And that's hard for me, and I think for a lot of people that are listening.
Yeah, I think, Shannon, you bring up a great point, because sometimes, or oftentimes, hindsight's 2020. And so you can look back on a scenario and say, yes, I know that played out as it should have. But sometimes when you're in the midst of it, it's hard and it's challenging. And so I think, just linking back to what we talked about earlier, lean into that uncomfortableness to say, okay, I'm going to experience this to the fullest. And as you said, have that confidence that you will get to wherever it is that you're supposed to be and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact quote, but you gave me a quote along that line that I literally had thumbtacked up in my cubicle. But it was basically like, it's going to happen when it's supposed to happen, was the gist of the quotes. And then she gave that to me, and I literally printed it out and put it up on my cube wall. So that sort of really gets me into what I think is a second element of courage that I want to talk about today, which is resiliency. I think, like all of us, the last 3 to 4 years, for a variety of different reasons, have been exceptionally challenging. So how do you think you've personally built resiliency?
Yeah, I would tell you, Shannon, I think, as you said, the last couple of years, just for the world, has been a time unlike any others. And for me, I have two key things that I've really leaned into. Some of them are newer aspects, and some are those that I've cultivated over time. But the first is what I would call work-life integration. So probably like many of those listeners to this fantastic podcast, I wear many different hats. So professional, wife, mother, friend, and so on. And one of the things I've learned is that, not to sound cliche, but there is no such thing as perfect work-life balance. I think there's an integration of the two, where you're going to have peaks and valleys in those two different worlds. And it's how you commingle those. So having the awareness of how you handle that. So just as an example, if one were to say, I think I'm going to start a new job, I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to build a house, I think I'm going to have a baby all in the same year, might make someone
I would
pause
first
and
of all say
"Whoa."
you're insane, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I think it's one where you'd say, can I integrate those things? And what level of energy is it going to take for me to do those? And so I'm very aware of how you mesh those things together. I'm a big fan and believer that I think you can have peaks at the same time with both of those. I don't think you can hold that state for an indefinite time frame. And so it's being really thoughtful on how and when and what you step into. So that's
I'm laughing because you and I share a contact, and I'm not going to say her name because she will kill me later. But she finished her degree.
Yes.
She built a house, and she started a new job all in a really short time frame. And she was already in the degree, so that was underway. Right. But then she decided to move out of her current home into a rental, build her house, and switch jobs. And I was like, okay, so I know that you're pretty gritty and you're really determined, but are you sure you want to do all this at one time? Now, I will tell you, the good news is she did all three of them. And it was a fun, I want to call it fun watching her journey, because I was constantly going, okay, you got this. We got it. We got all of this. Oh, it reminded me of that story.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
How have you built resiliency in your teams? Because I will tell you, I'm going to tell you an important lesson I learned from you while you're thinking about that question. I'm not a morning person. Dina will tell you that. So yes, I'm real open about that, especially if I'm in the office and I'm just a grump for the first 30-ish minutes of the day.
Yeah.
But what really impacted me, Dina, is you would come in to work and or between meetings and be incredibly positive. And I never really truly understood the impact of that as a team member until I experienced it. And today it's impacted. If I'm having a crappy day, sometimes I'll just get up. I work from home. I'll get up and go on the porch so I can readjust myself, especially if I'm going to be on a meeting with my team. after
Right.
that. So I'm just
Absolutely.
curious how you've used that or anything else in building resiliency on your teams.
Yeah, I love to share a couple additional things, Shannon. The first thing I would share, and this is for myself and for teams and those around me, I decided many years ago to really live my life by this really simple mantra, both personally and professionally: grit, grace, and gratitude. So we talked
Mm,
a little bit earlier about grit, just that strength, how you have courage, how you step into that. That's the first piece. Second piece is grace. And the way that I define that is really just self-compassion and kindness, not only for others, but for yourself. Sometimes people really forget both those fronts, but oftentimes for themselves. Um, and then the last piece is gratitude. So I am I am such a believer in being thankful for everything that you experience. And I learned this really simple technique from a prior leader, super simple. I do it daily, takes less than 5 minutes. I take a couple minutes at the end of the day and I say to myself, let me self reflect and think about what went well. Take those moments, think about that, kind of put it back in your toolkit. And then I also reflect on what's that even better if? What's that learning that you said, that conversation didn't go as how I
mm,
wanted it to go. And so what's my learnings?
mm.
So I think living with that mantra, not only for myself, but then even doing that with my team. And I'll use a simple example. You mentioned birthdays earlier, but one of the things I do professionally is I have a weekly gratitude practice. And I do it every Friday. It's literally on my calendar if I showed
Mm,
it to you. But I,
yep.
I capture as I go through the week just different people or situations that I want to reach out to at the end of the week. And it could be something as simple as a quick call, a ping, a text, an email, depending on the scenario, just to say thank you. Thank you so much for this, or I saw you do this. It was fantastic, and that is so fulfilling. One, for you, and two, the impact that it can have on others. Never underestimate what that can look like, and it's something so simple. So
Mm,
that's just a really simple share, Shannon, for both yourself and others that you can take and go from that
yeah.
perspective.
I'm laughing because I used to think that the gratitude was just a bunch of fluff. There's the engineer
Mm.
coming out, right? I used to
Yep,
think,
yep.
oh, this doesn't matter. That's just silly. And I'll actually put a link in the show notes. I'm not endorsing. I obviously don't get any financial compensation for it, but I just bought my own gratitude journal.
Mm,
And that's one thing I know a lot of people have talked about this, but the thing that really clicked it for me was Brene Brown said gratitude and joy are interconnected. You can't have one without the other.
mm.
And I can't imagine living life without joy. And if you want more joy in your life, you have to put more gratitude in your life. They can't be separated. And so I think
Absolutely.
that's I love that. I used to get a lot of pings and emails from her on Friday. Now I know why.
Yes. Now you
That's
know.
a
Now
great,
you.
that's a great, that's a great, that's a great tip to share. I think I need to start doing that. At least build some time in the week because you forget, not forget, that didn't come out right. You get busy and you're like, oh, shoot,
Yes.
day's over, got to go. Right. I got to go
Yeah.
do this other thing.
Absolutely. Shannon, the other thing I'd love to share about resiliency for teams is really twofold. And again, these sound like really simple things, but one, create space and time for really trust and honesty in your team. If you can
Hmm.
cultivate that, it's priceless. And um, one simple thing that I do as a leader, as an example, in one-on-ones, I like to start my one-on-ones with a person of how are you, but have that conversation up front of not how are you, like give me the PC answer, but really how are you? Are things going well? Is there something you're struggling with, whether it's personal or professional, obviously to the comfort level and relationship you have with that person? If you can do that, Shannon,
Hmm.
the the atmosphere that it creates within a team is so impactful because not only does that rub off between yourself and the person, but then the team as a whole. And I'm such a believer that if you build diverse teams, diverse experiences, backgrounds, mindsets, personalities, teams are better when they work together. If we can all use our strengths, um, that is where you get resiliency. And when I've seen teams do that, come together with a purpose, it is amazing the results and the growth that comes from it. So really simple things that you could do that, one, people will carry forward with them, and two, you'll have just absolutely exceptional results and team camaraderie that comes from it.
Mm. Yeah, because I think what it really says but doesn't say is I see you.
Absolutely. I see you on the good days. I see you on the days that are really tough. But I see you through all of it, and I'll support you, and that's huge.
Yeah, and I think I didn't intentionally mean to put empathy in here, but I'm going to pull it in. It's knowing the difference when you ask that question between empathy and sympathy. So sympathy is I feel sorry for you.
Correct.
And that can come across as a little bit condescending or, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you, right? Versus empathy, which is like, oh man, that just really stinks.
Absolutely.
I would say if you share a story, keep it really short. What Karen Lau shared recently was don't go any longer than 45 seconds or else it becomes about you. But you can say, man, I just did this really something similar last week and I felt the same way.
Absolutely.
And it's a totally different experience.
Yes.
When you do that.
Yes. It's really validation, Shannon. It's, as you said, it's hearing people, it's validating whatever it is that they're going through.
And it's also saying that you're not an other because that thing is happening to you or with you or whatever. It's, I see you.
Yes.
And I see you because I'm really there with you and whatever this is.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing to give, and it's a beautiful thing to receive as well.
Oh yeah, very true. I have two more questions for you. I know that diversity and inclusion are passions for both of us. We've both traveled, and I'm still traveling. I know you are as well, that journey. And I think it takes a lot of courage. It's taken a lot of courage for me to step into spaces that I am still don't understand and I'm learning about. What situation or story comes to mind of how you've created belonging on your team that's a diverse team? How have you used that? What does courage look like in that situation?
Yeah. So Shannon, I'm gonna share a personal story that happened about 18 months ago. And when I get to the end of the story, I think it'll be very apparent why and how this connects. But so roughly 18 months ago, I was in a staff meeting with my leader at the time. And one of the things that this leader did was his direct reports, we would rotate every couple weeks, sharing a story about inclusion, belonging, diversity, and so forth. And so on this particular day, this was on the agenda. And one of my coworkers told a story. And so he'd been with the company about 10 years at the time. And he shared the story how 10 years ago, when he started with the company was in the midst of centralizing this particular function we were working in. And to do this, the leader at the time brought everyone together globally into one location to have this, let's call it launch of this centralized function. Right. And this leader who was sharing had not yet started with the company. I believe they were going to start maybe in another 2 or 3 weeks. And just based on the opportunity, the hiring manager said, please come join us. It's a great opportunity that I would hate to have you miss, even though you haven't started yet. And so one of the events during this couple days was a team dinner. So picture this large ballroom, Shannon, many tables. Everyone's all spread out. Hundreds of people. I think there was, 400 people there or something from that perspective. And this leader shared how he came in, didn't really know anyone, and it was a lot to be able to step into this room and not know. So he went to a table and he sat down. And he's a bit of an introvert. And very shortly, someone came and sat at the table with him and started to share about the company and ask questions and really engage this person. And so the leader sharing this story stopped and he said, the person who I'm telling the story about is sitting at the table. And who he was talking about, Shannon, was me.
Oh gosh.
Yes. And so I had two feelings that came to mind right away. One was shock and two was delight. And I'll explain both. So one, shock in the sense that although I remembered the event, I didn't remember the details. of which this leader had shared. And so this individual is very, very important to me. And so I was delighted that I had been able to play a role
Right.
to help this person in that moment of uncomfortableness. But the reason I share that story, Shannon, for me, this person's been incredible. They've been a mentor and a sponsor and a leader, but it was a really small thing. So it's sometimes being courageous doesn't have to be this gigantic, really tough thing that you step into. It could be something really, really small that doesn't seem like a lot for you, but is really impactful for the other person. So I wanted to share that just because in the moment I thought that's incredible that you're sharing that.
Did you
20
know he was
years
talking
later.
about you, he or
No,
she? Okay. So that you
I did
were
not.
actually shocked at the outcome of when he told
Oh,
the
correct.
story.
As he told the story, I literally had no idea until the air until the very end. And I said, oh, but it's again, it's a beautiful reminder of courage can be big and small. Again, it doesn't have to be those huge things.
Yeah, I think what really brought to mind, kind of going back to coaching and mentoring, I know that's so important to you. I had a conversation with a colleague. We did not work in the same group, but we sat near one another in the office.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was like after hours one night when we were both still there.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, I'm going to call it an impromptu, coaching session, for lack of a better word. And this person said to me, she said it to me multiple times. She said, the things that you said in that conversation have caused me to make these changes as I've navigated my career. And I remember the conversation. I don't remember all the details like you said,
Right.
but I was like, wow, oh gosh, okay. I'm glad that we had that conversation and that it had an impact on you. And I to your point, that's courage in the moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, Shannon, to your point, I think it's also a gift when people share that with you of,
Oh
wow,
yeah.
you didn't realize the impact that you were having. And I think, like we said earlier, people carry that forward. People carry forward the goodness and continue to shine that light on others. And so it grows and grows.
I love that story. I might use that, not use your name, of course, but I might use that in a future speaking engagement. All right. All right. One more question for you. What is one piece of advice or quote you would like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, for me, Shannon, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but for me, it's really, I encourage all your listeners, lean in, get really comfortable and practice being uncomfortable. Think about the experiences that you're looking for. Think about how your network can help support you in those. For those that are listening in, you can't see us on video, but right behind my shoulder is one of my favorite pieces of artwork that I own, and I'll describe it. It's a little goldfish in an ocean, and the goldfish has this shark fin sort of strapped to them, and the wording on it says mindset is everything. And so for me, that's what I would leave your audience with. Mindset is everything. Be comfortable, lean in, do those hard things because you'll continue to grow, but also know you're not alone. You have so many in your network and others who will support you along that journey.
That is so true. And I'm going to tell a funny story. So Dina has incredible artwork like that, no matter where her office is, be it in a corporate building or at home. And then when literally we got on the call, I was like, oh, look, Dina, you've got one of your inspirational pieces of art behind you. I'm like, it's still the same. I love it.
It is. It is.
Yeah. The final thing I would say about that, so it is a goldfish swimming in water, she said. I would always say, think about the water that you're swimming in and how can you maybe help change what that water looks like based on your own mindset? Because we're all swimming in water. We don't really realize the system or the process that we're swimming in.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid of the glitter and sprinkle, Shannon.
Yeah, we're gonna end there. So for those of you who are at the Powering Women conference, I did bring some shine in my shoes and in my dress and in my shirt. So I am a big fan of sparkle sequins, and I got that love of it early on, but Dina was a booster mid-career. So what is it? We like glitter, confetti.
Yes.
What else do we like, Dina?
All that stuff. Cowbells.
Cowbells, glitter, confetti, you name it. We've used it. I have destroyed people's cubes with it. So I'm going to end this by thank you so much, Dina, for being with us today. I know both of us wish you a wonderful holiday season, and may it bring a lot of sparkle to your life. Thanks, Dina, for joining us.
Thank you, Shannon.